Now, South Africa's Transnet squandered billions of dollars and broke a raft of regulations when it altered the terms of a deal to buy new locomotives. The state-owned company commissioned a probe in July last year after investigative journalists alleged that massive kickbacks were paid on the deal. Documents published at the time stated that in 2014, Transnet's board agreed to pay a total of $2.9 billion for the new locomotives. However, the bill rose to $4.1 billion after the 7-year delivery period was accelerated. Its board, which has since been replaced, said the probe didn't uncover wrongdoing by any of its officials, an assertion the law firm has disputed. All right, Angelo Coppola joins us live from Johannesburg to break it all down for us. Angelo, this report identifies serious breaches of statutes, regulations, corporate governance, among other issues. Break it down for us. What is detailed in that report?
Well, the bottom line here is the fact that there's a whole range of issues. We haven't seen or had sight of that report just yet, but it boils down to corporate governance issues. It also points to the board and specifically the CEO, that's Brian Molefe, and the CFO maybe not sharing all the details with the board, so not allowing the board to make a proper decision based on the information that they were given. So there were fingers pointed at the board for making the inappropriate decisions, and there were fingers pointed at the two who have since left, that's Singh and Molefe, for not providing the right information for whatever reasons that were given. So there's a whole range of issues that are being exposed at the moment. Of course, we don't have sight of that full report to understand exactly what the details are, but that's what we have for now, Panina.
And Angelo, the law firm behind this report says that Transnet may have deliberately withheld or sanitized some evidence, in part because some key figures were not available to be interviewed. What's Transnet's response to this?
Well, Transnet have said what they said in terms of the board that was in place during this whole transaction phase. They've said that that's the old board and they'll have to answer to the allegations that have been put forward by the writers of this report. That's the Workman's legal firm. So bottom line here is, though, that it's an issue because they don't quite know where to turn to. So they're kind of battening down the hatches, stepping away and saying, we'll have to wait and see when the investigation gets underway and when those people get called to deliver evidence or to defend themselves. Either way, if they're found to have committed any form of illegal activity, it's likely that the authorities in the form of the Hawks will then observe in fact the evidence that's been laid and then probably press charges at that stage. But it's batten down the hatches and wait for the investigation and the inquiry to take place. Nina?
And then, Angelo, we have the board saying that they did nothing wrong. So question is, if they did nothing wrong, how do they explain the 41% rise in the value of the contract, an initial figure of $3 billion?
Well, they didn't explain it, and that's the whole issue here, because they didn't have to. They felt that they were exonerated by the first report prior to this Worksman's report. So they the old board basically said, we've been exonerated, we don't have to defend ourselves, and everything's hunky-dory as far as we're concerned. Obviously, Worksman's report now points to a different issue here, so we have to wait for the investigation and, well, also the inquiry to hear how the board explains that they can't be held liable for those losses on that huge over-expenditure, nearly double.
So how does this contract look back to the controversial Gupta family, if at all? Because one of their known associates, Salim Essa, is reported to have been involved in this questionable expenditure.
Well, he was in fact the front man and is the front man for the Gupta family, and he's the man behind the creation of the Tequesta agency. That's the company that earned that 21% commission, around $400 million, for facilitating the deal between China Rail, or South China Rail, and Transnet. So that's where that person steps in. There's also Nevin Reddy, who was responsible for regiments, and they in fact billed, invoiced, and were paid $8 million to provide some financial advice to Transnet on this whole deal. Regiments, of course, you know, was also and was involved in the Eskom shenanigans, which saw Brian Molefe and our friend Anwar Singh involved in funneling a whole wad of US dollars into that market space. So we have regiments and we have Tequesta, and that's the Gupta overlay that we're seeing right now. Panina?
All right, Angelo, we appreciate those insights. Thank you very much for joining us. Angelo Coppola live for us in Johannesburg.